First to face the deal makers is George Clifford from 4 Avenues. Will he bite back or will he be chewed up and spat out? George, welcome to the deal.
Ed, how are you?
Now, how fast is the blood pumping today?
Yeah, the nerves are real. I'm up against some pretty fierce and experienced deal makers today, so hoping we can get on the same page and tick some boxes for them.
And what's making you most nervous?
I guess the unknown, Ed. I'm sure they'll have some curly questions for me and I'll just do my best to answer those.
What sort of questions are you hoping they won't ask?
Great question, that one in particular. I guess it's probably some of the minor stat details. Obviously there's a lot of information out there, so remembering all the details is pretty difficult. So,
are you not across the numbers?
I understand the basic numbers that apply to our project. When you're on the spot, it's a whole different situation.
And there are a couple of new deal makers this season. Which one are you most nervous about talking to?
I haven't yet met Vanessa. I am most concerned about Mickey.
And what makes you concerned about the Duke of Deals?
The Duke of Deals is a hard taskmaster. He's very tough on making sure the investments are a good product for his investors.
And what happens if you don't get a deal today?
There's a lot at stake for us today. If we can't make our deal stack up for the deal makers, we're going to have a very hard time selling to investors. So it may be back to the drawing board.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you the best of luck and we'll talk to you after.
Thanks, Ed.
Remember, if 2 out of 3 deal makers say yes to the deal, then you at home will have the chance to invest in the properties that George shows today. But will George know his numbers? Can he sell the stats? And will the deal makers be into these investments? It's time to let the deal makers decide. This is The Deal.
G'day deal makers, I'm George from 4 Avenues, and a little bit about me before I hook into the development today. We're a development company based in Christchurch that specialises in producing townhouses for investors. We've been running for 5 years now, and it's an owner-operated business by me and my brother. I'll whip these off and we'll hook into the deal. So today we've got 8 architecturally designed townhouses in Barrington Street in Spraydon. Firstly, we love Spraydon. We think it's a great mix of affordability and livability. We're building this development out of brick and colour steel, some of the lowest maintenance material in the game, and also some of the hardest wearing product in the game. On offer today, we have our first 8 townhouses, which are a 2-bed, 2-bath option between 79 and 80 square metres. They have a rental assessment of between $550 and $560, and we have an asking price of $589 and $599 for these. We have a 1-bedroom option in this development. It's a 67 square metre option that has a rental assessment of $470, and we have an asking price of $505,000. We also have 3 2-bed, 1-bath options. They sit at 77 squares, a rental assessment of $540 per week, and an asking price of $575. I've got some information packs and some hats to hand out to you guys, so I'll do that now.
Gonna be hard pressed to get me into a hat.
Thanks, George.
No dramas. There you go, team.
Don't put that on, you look like an idiot.
Okay, Andy.
The deal makers will now ask their questions, but the Prince of Property has picked up some plagiarism.
You stolen my packs, George.
There's some inspiration that has been, utilised.
They do look very familiar.
There's a saying about that.
What's the saying, George?
Hi, George. I'm Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
Good to see you. Are we going for the agricultural look here?
So, Mickey, we want to pair hard materials and long-lasting materials together. I really like the combination of brick and steel in this one, so I guess yes.
Hi George, Vanessa here.
Hi Vanessa.
Hi. One thing that sticks out from the renders there is the shape of the windows, and it's they're angular. What are you going to do for curtains?
Yeah, great question that. It's not the first time we've put in angled windows. We actually have a great relationship with our blind supplier, and we are putting in a custom blind to each of these windows. We've considered that, yes, they may be a little bit more expensive for us to put in, but the way we're designing it is that they will actually be easy to replace in terms of the material.
I'm looking through the pack, and there's a lot about the development itself, but there's not a lot about you. So I'm going to ask you some questions about you.
Certainly.
Basically, I see in your historical website that your grandmother was one of the founding developers in Christchurch. Is that right?
Yes, she acquired a fair few properties back in the day.
So are you riding on her coattails?
Yeah, good question. I guess there would be the assumption that I was. I've been involved in property on my own terms for close to 10 years now. I started off doing property management, earning my own wage. While I was a property manager, I also was selling real estate. I needed a bit more fuel in the fire, so I started in residential property sales. From there, I was selling a lot of remediated and renovated houses. It's something that I always wanted to get into, and I guess something that's been in my blood. As you mentioned, it's in the family. So I started buying older homes, renovating them, and trying to hang on to them while the LVR levels were allowing me to do so.
So George, as an ex-real estate agent, who's going to be the buyer when an investor sells this product later on?
So when the investor sells the product later on, I can't speak for what demographic exactly, depending how far in the future may purchase it. I think the stock, we design it for investors. So I believe it would still continue to be a good investment for another investor at that later stage. I mean, we don't discriminate and not allow first home buyers to purchase it also. Yeah.
So if you're only selling to investors, or specifically that product is going to resell to investors, isn't that going to limit your capital growth?
So I guess capital growth, we work off the average capital growth in the area, and I think as all prices in the area have been increasing, I think since 2020 there's been a 6.4% growth in capital value.
But is that houses or is that these?
So that's the area specific, so
Right.
I can't speak for whether that's townhouses.
Right, so you don't know
or
what
general
townhouses
houses.
are?
The
growth of
capital
townhouses.
growth on townhouses. To be honest, there is a varying rate of people selling townhouses. It's something that's been more prolific in the last few years. I don't think there's enough information out there yet with where the development cycle is to tell what the capital growth is going to be on those. So I would be concerned commenting.
An unknown investment then?
It's an investment based for an investor that's looking for yield and cash flow.
Okay, so what is the cash flow, do you think?
So we have worked off a 4.8% yield for every single one of these houses. We try and hit a yield above our competitors and above what is typical in the area. Again, that takes into consideration older homes and townhouses currently.
Okay, so I did the cash flow. What do you think the capital growth on this will be over the next 12 months, if you took a guess?
The capital, again, I would be concerned about commenting on capital growth. I think we've hit the bottom of the market recently, and I expect capital growth to maybe not continue at its longer term rate over the next, how many years did you say?
You said 22 years, right? 24 years.
24 years.
But over the next 12 months,
Yeah.
what would you expect the growth to be, just out of curiosity?
Well, so it's an interesting one with this
4%,
development.
4%, 3%, 5%?
I honestly can't tell you because I don't have a crystal ball. We can't say for sure. There's so many factors in the economy in New Zealand and Reserve Bank.
So let's say it's 5% then, so
Okay.
a percent below the long-term average.
Yep.
That would be 30 grand worth of growth over the next 12 months. It'll cost an investor 25 grand a year to own that property. Is that a good investment?
So I believe that our investors, by the time we build it, will experience a bit of capital uplift because we seem to be significantly more affordable than some of the other competition of 2-bed, 2-bath options in Spraydon currently.
So what sets you apart, do you think?
So for us, we've tried to add a couple of features to set ourselves apart. This product is the result of a lot of market feedback. We're very receptive to market feedback. Size and storage has been a big factor in these ones. We've made them bigger than some of our previous stock. This render doesn't show, but in the plans in your booklet, you'll see we've actually added a built-in bench, which adds storage for the tenant there, and it allows for more space in the kitchen area. We also, this time around, are adding an additional heat pump upstairs because if you ever stand in a new build townhouse in the middle of summer, they can get hot. So we think it's only fair to allow the tenants to regulate the heat through having that extra heat pump. We've also added an attic ladder and tried to maximize the storage in the attic space, which a lot of people aren't doing at the moment.
George, I don't notice any external storage on your plans as of yet. They are car park units. This is an active area. What do you suggest the tenants do or the homeowners do for storage?
Yes, so you have a bike shed storage. We've gone and tried to mitigate your maintenance on the exterior for your tenants. So instead of having larger grassed areas or even small grassed areas that require maintenance and upkeep, we've tried to keep it to the bare minimum to reduce the requirement for that outdoor storage. The problem with outdoor storage at the moment in a residential unit is that the council require them to be fireproofed now. So you can end up adding a lot of cost to the construction due to having to fire rate a small outdoor shed for these units.
George, one of the things that I want to make sure of is that you complete, when you say you're going to complete, you've got an expected finish in Q2 2025?
Yes.
How often do you hit a completion date that you've forecast?
So we actually factor in for a rainy day or a couple of rainy days essentially along the way. We always seem to come in on time. We front load a lot of our work, and our building team, surveyor and planner are all involved from inception. So from that place, all of our suppliers are also aware of what project we've got coming up, what materials will require, and that sort of organisation mitigates any delays.
We want to make sure that the product is fit for purpose. How many times have you not completed on time?
So we haven't not completed on time to date, and that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly was the organisation I mentioned before. Secondly is because if our investors are having to renew their loan terms, it makes the whole process a lot harder for them potentially if they have a change in circumstance. We don't want that. We want to make it as easy as possible for them. So for that reason, we haven't had experienced that yet, and we try everything we can to not have that situation.
So what has gone wrong for you in developing?
So obviously a couple of years ago, you would know very well about the issues with supply. I think during that period, we had a 2 to 3 week delay with our jib. Apart from that, our worst situation has been a reduction in size of a hot water cylinder. We've been very lucky to date. I know there are a lot of issues in property development. We've been very lucky to date, but I think it's a testament to our organisation.
George, I just want to touch on the rental appraisals.
Sure.
For the 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom specifically,
Yes.
you've run your numbers based at the high end of that rental appraisal, $570 a week.
What we've done is for the northeast and the northwest option, 2-bed, 2-bath options, we've added $10 more because I find based on my experience is that people prefer the larger site size, and the west side has its own car park, so I think you could expect to hit that. There's less comparable stock that has rented for the same price, or slightly inferior stock that's rented for that same level.
What I'm getting at is that 570 is at the very, very top end of the market in there. I haven't seen a 2-bedroom car park rent for 570 a week.
Yeah, so it's at 560 per week. The rental assessment says 570, but I've worked off a price point back from there for our most premium parts of the development.
George, I'm going to ask you a question about your funders. So what I want to know is, what is your funders' exit strategy if you're unable to complete it?
Yeah, great question. So we have been pretty aggressively reinvesting back into our business in order to grow. We have an internal rule that means we actually need to purchase the land in cash before we'll actually buy a deal. That does a couple of things. It doesn't cost us an interest while we wait for council to spit out the paperwork. On top of that, it gives the main banks a really lovely opportunity to engage with us in a less rush manner, and they get to digest the deal and work out in their metrics if it's something they'll pursue.
And where's the money come from?
So the money's come from reinvestment consistently in the business. I started off, obviously, a lot of renovating and selling, and this business today is the result of it. We actually haven't built as many townhouses as some of our competitors or some of the other players out there who are stretched a lot thinner and risk that issue of if they don't get pre-sales, they're not building.
So you put your own money in?
We're heavily invested ourselves in these projects.
Is there any other outside investment?
We have no other outside investment. It's all our own capital, which sets us apart from anybody else that has capital funds.
George, I did a bit of company's office search on you and 4 avenues beforehand. Your name didn't come up as a director on the entities, just wondering why.
On 4 avenues?
Avenues,
Yeah, so we have a structure with me and my brother as owner-operators where the bank's preference is literally to have less people as the director for their finance purposes. It's a lot easier to deal with one person at a time. So we have a separate trading company each that we will both be the director of at different times, and it helps us discuss projects with main banks in a much more simpler way.
So does that mean if a client purchases one of these and it falls over halfway through, you're not on the hook, your brother is?
Correct, yeah. But we both work together, in that regard.
You know what they say about family and fish? They go off in 3 days. How are you going to make sure that relationship sticks?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a yin and yang setup. I'm obviously out there doing the day-to-day running of the business. Jack has the ability to be forecasting, spreadsheeting, and he does a lot of the financial calculating as well, whereas I'll be out there looking for land, talking to the tradespeople.
George, if Jack's on the hook, why isn't he here today?
As I said before, Jack's best attributes are behind the scenes. We stick to what we're best at.
What's Jack's background?
Jack's background, he's got a degree in property valuation. He got that at Lincoln University here in Canterbury. He worked as a property valuer for a couple of years, and then I brought him on to assist me with these property ventures.
If Jack's got a background in property valuation, how have you worked out the value for these?
So the value for these is essentially based off the yield we wanted our investors to achieve. So we reverse engineer our projects based on the yield we want to provide.
So that yield that you're talking about 4.7, 4.8% I read in your pack, you said that that's competitive. Tell us what everyone else's is.
So the information I'm running off today is the competing stock prices in Spraydon. As Mickey mentioned before, there's a roof to the rental you can achieve for a 2-bed, 2-bath. If they're at a higher price than I am, their yield is going to be impacted from that.
Can you give us a comparison yield for someone else?
So I don't want to name names, but the next cheapest stock is at inquiries above 599. We all know that means they want a bit more than that. From there, they range from low to mid, some even in the high sixes for a 2-bed, 2-bathroom option in the same area.
And how do your units, other than yield, stand out to those units? Or are the other ones better and that's why you're paying more?
So I have a firm view that everybody thinks their townhouse investments are better than everybody else's. I'm not saying mine are better than theirs, but they are the result of a lot of market feedback. We've tried to maximise storage and maximise usability of the unit, and by adding the en-suited option as well, we've opened up the opportunity for more than just a young couple to move into these units.
So if your focus is on yield, are you saying these products are suitable for an investor looking for yield compared to growth?
Correct, yes, but although the area has grown very well compared to the rest of Christchurch.
Which is it? Is it growth or yield?
It's a yield property.
George, are your expected rates and insurances correct? Or are they?
So they're just an estimate to date. We can only go off a draft residents association budget, a draft or an estimated insurance budget that's actually relative to our project, and the rates we use off comparable townhouses in the area.
But these are Q2 2025. We know the council's chucking the rates up by 10 to 15%.
So I did actually look at that last night and noticed that there are a number of rates moving from that 2,800 mark for a comparable product to around 3,100 or 3,000, which I've sort of put that range in the pack. Again, I stress it's an estimate.
They look high.
That I'd rather overestimate than under.
I'd like to be accurate.
Okay. I think the accuracy will come later, but I struggle to see how you can be accurate when you don't have the firm numbers in front of you.
Would you say there's a glut of 2-bedroom townhouses in Spraydon, George?
I would say that we all look at the townhouses being built throughout all of Christchurch and assume that is the situation. However, I'm sure they said the same thing about the 3-bedroom Summerhill Stone period in the 50s.
George, your boots are looking pretty fresh there. Are they just for look?
So I don't know. To be honest, my old Blunderstones lasted 8 years, so I thought I'd buy a new pair.
Vanessa's concerned that George might not be on the building side as much as he says he is.
George, I feel like nobody's really ever heard of you and 4Avs before. So why would they invest in one of your townhouses here?
Yeah, great question. We haven't been around for that long comparatively to some of the bigger players out there, and we don't have such a big market presence in there. I view that as a good thing because being smaller and more nimble, we are more controlled around our quality rather than mass producing products. All of our developments look different. And for that reason, essentially, we know we need to offer our product at a more competitive rate because people aren't buying on face value, they're buying on investment return.
How many projects you're going at any one time?
So we have 35 townhouses under construction currently and 35 in planning and design, including this block.
And how many have you completed?
So we've completed 75 townhouses successfully and handed over.
Are you going to be around for the long term?
We have a very long-term view.
How long's long term?
I'd like to do it until I can't do it any longer.
Because you go bust?
Well, I think based on the way we invest so heavily into our own projects, we would have to have something seriously go wrong for that to be the case.
What kind of thing would make that go wrong?
I actually can't think off the top of my head because we would just retain the whole block. And if that went wrong, then I think there'd be a few problems elsewhere also.
What has gone wrong for you and what have you learned from that?
Yeah, so...
Other than the 2 weeks because of Jib?
Yep. So I guess the main thing that we've learnt is the product that we're producing. We find other people may get confused about what they're offering, and they may be looking at a price point for a first home buyer and assume their whole stock list is going to get that point, whereas we look at a yield percentage and work backwards from that point, which helps us pick our sales price.
Have you lost money?
No, I haven't lost money.
How do I know that you can ride it out when you do lose money? Because you will lose money.
Because it'll be my own money. I'm not losing an investor's money, and I think that's where it might become sticky.
It's decision time. Will the deal makers do a deal? If 2 out of 3 deal makers say yes to the deal, George's properties will be available for you to invest in. If not, George goes home empty-handed.
Okay, George, so time to see if we're going to do a deal. Now, 2 new deal makers this year. So let's start with Vanessa.
George, I like your transparency. I like the amount of resourcing that you have to back it. I like that you put your own money in. I like that you've done the feasibility around it and you've got a main bank lender behind backing the project. I am disappointed that your brother's not here today. I do want to see him and have a discussion with him, but on that basis, I'd like to do a deal.
Thank you.
Now, you're the Duke of Deals, but I actually wonder if it should be the Sovereign of Sayings. Go on.
My decision comes with some caveats or it comes with some conditions.
Sure.
I would like to see some solid fencing. I want it to be a bit of a noise barrier for clients.
Sure.
I'd like to see a little bit more storage options, especially in the car parking. But ultimately, the deal stacks. So it's a yes from me.
Thank you, Mickey.
George has got the 2 yeses he needs, but will the Prince of Property give the deal his royal backing?
George, I think this is a growth product, not a yield product. It makes a good yield, but it is definitely a growth product. This is a townhouse in a good location with good capital growth. Okay. I just want to know if you knew your numbers as well as I knew your numbers. I think it's a good investment. I would recommend this to investors. We've got a deal.
Thank you, Andrew.
And so George has got the 2 yeses and the deal he came for.
Thank you.
His properties are now available to invest in at thedeal.co. Go to thedeal.co to download the property pack and choose your property.
Oh, get that off, you're a deal maker now.
Oh, mate, I love it. Live a little, Andy.
You look like Donald Trump.
George, congratulations on making a deal.
Ed, thank you.
Now, which part of that made you sweat the most?
Oh, that was brutal. I think when we started going down the road of Milsford and also my brother were the hardest points.
Okay, and of the 3 deal makers, who's the fiercest? Who's the friendliest?
So I think in hindsight, Andrew was certainly the fiercest. Mickey and Vanessa were tough but fair, I think.
Okay, now that you've made a deal, these properties that you've presented today, they're going to be available to invest in and to purchase for anybody watching this at home. What does that mean for you and 4 Avenues?
It means the world to us. We couldn't be happier with the result, and we're really excited to get the stock out there.
Well, we've found some good investment properties to recommend to investors. Well done, George.
Thanks,
we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
These properties are now available at thedeal.co.